Greetings. In this part of our discussion, we are evaluating the promise from the Lord to the Israelis and Jews. And we said that the promise the Lord gave to the Israelis is divided into two parts. Two parts. Not one promise, but two promises. One is good, one is bad. One is wonderful, one is miserable. And the rotten Zionists, they do not wish to look at the miserable part of the promise. They only see the good part, as if, the words of God are worthless. And that bad part, doesn't exist or did not apply. While the bad part is actually what happened. So let us look, at both parts of this promise. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. This is this is the best place we can look at the promise in full. The two parts are explained. And when we say Deuteronomy, meaning Moses was in the company of the Israelis, and they did not enter the land yet. And remember, Moses did not go with them into the land. Moses left them before they reached inside the land, and they were led by Joshua. Moses and Aaron left them. Aaron died. Very well. Deuteronomy 28, it says, if you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all his commands, I give you today. That's Moses speaking to the Israelis, all the Israelis present. The Lord your God will set you high above all the nations on earth. Above all the nations on earth. And as we understand from history, history is our witness. We know that, the Israelis were the worst and the most miserable among all the nations on earth. They were the most miserable, period. In Egypt, they were miserable slaves for 400 years, or 430, because we have two different, versions of this in their book. One part says 400, another part 430. Whatever is the period. They were living miserably, miserable slaves. And we spoke about this. Their children died at the hands of the pharaohs, newborns. 1 year they leave, and year they exterminate. And they were slave to hard work and in this slavery, and their women were abused by the Egyptians, raped and molested and whatever you want to call it. So, this is what happened in Egypt. They were miserable, rotten, miserable life. Then we see in Palestine, when they entered the land, continuous wars with the Palestinians. They never raised over the Palestinians. The only period that they really had a break, a real break, was under David, King David. But even during the life of David, they had continuous wars with the Palestinians. And sometimes David will go even to the Palestinian side to fight his own people, the Israelites, who were seeking his life at one time. And then under Solomon now, they had an empire and they had peace for a small period of time during the time since Solomon received ruling staff from his father David after David's death, and Solomon became the king until the time he died, 735 years before Jesus Christ. So they did have some peace, and they did have, they were over the Palestinians, over the Arabian Peninsula, over the Sheba, over Babylon, over many people, many nations. That was true for a very short period of time. Then what happened? They were plucked out, became miserable slaves in Babylon, continued to be miserable slaves under Persia, and this lasted for about 100 years according to them. And I don't trust any of their dating and information. But at least 100 years in such a miserable life. They were, for a very short period of time over all those nations, but then, 100 years, submissive, rotten, miserable life. Then they came back for a very short period of time, miserable and humbled and submissive unto Rome, under Rome, who was controlling the land after defeating Persia. Then, after a very short period